Hello, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining me today. So this month, our topic is all about how to deploy Salamander solutions to track attendees at your conferences. So this is a topic that I've touched on briefly in a past webinar I ran called Integrating Salamander Solutions into Your Daily Operations. However, that was very high level. In today's training, we're going to go much more in depth, and we're going to really focus on that workflow, such as checking in the attendees and then moving them from class to class. And we'll also take a look at some of the reports as well too that you can pull to see attendance as well as see who should get certificates for attending those classes. Now during the training, if you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask, or you can always send me a question through the chat function. So when managing your conferences, there are two solutions that we recommend you use. The first one is SalamanderLive, and the second one is the Track app. So generally, people would register for your conferences, right? So you would already have a roster of attendees beforehand. So what you would do is you would take that roster and then create those people a record in SalamanderLive, and then print them their ID tag and have it available at the registration desk for them to pick up when they check in. Now all the classes, including, if you want to include breakfast, lunch, dinner, anything that needs to be tracked should also be entered into SalamanderLive as assignments. Once they're entered, you can then print off those assignments so they can easily be scanned into the Track app for each day of the conference. So again, we'll walk through this process. SalamanderLive, again, would also be used to run those reports after the conference. So again, you're looking at attendance or attendee activity, seeing which classes they've checked in, when, if you're looking for them to attend the entirety of that class and they were only there for 5 minutes and they left for the rest of the day, you'll be able to see that. So we'll walk through that process for the Track app and for SalamanderLive. Now for Track app, this is going to be used to check the attendees at the registration desk. So you'd have that process there. I also show you a different process where you can use the check-in wizard to check them in there as well. So you've got two different ways that you can utilize this. And then you can also have the Track app, use that to check each attendee as they walk into each class. So you'd have a person stand at the door with their Track app and then check and scan them into that class. And then I'll talk about the movements from class to class and how you can work that out. If you wanted to, if you're also tracking for breakfast, lunch, or dinner, especially if these are paid meals, you can also scan them into each of those different assignments as well, and track them that way. So you can, so that your numbers will match up when it comes to number of people that paid and number of people that actually took a lunch or a dinner. And then there's a process for also checking them out as they leave the conference or the premise each day. So there's a couple different workflows in which we'll talk about, and you can kind of figure out which is the best for you. These workflows that I'm going to be talking about are workflows that we have worked with other agencies in the past to kind of help them figure out how to use their solutions for their conferences, and it has worked well in the past. So if you've used these for conferences and you want to chime in and kind of talk about some best practices that you guys have used, please share it with the group. All right, so I'm going to first start off with SalamanderLive. So I'm going to pull up SalamanderLive here. So obviously the first thing that you want to do here is to enter people into SalamanderLive. Now again, this is going to be really based upon how much records you are able to add into your system, because if these are large conferences, you've got a ton of people, but your max number of personnel records is limited, you may want to up that so that you have the right number of records in order to get all your attendees into the system. So you've got a couple ways to do this. You can just quickly do a quick add right here. So you can go to people. I'm going to make sure this is large enough. Hopefully you guys can see this. I'll add it to 150. So you can do a quick add and quickly add the people into the database here. So again, you just go in here, enter in their information, right? So their ID, their organization, first name, last name. Again, this is for your actual conference. So in this case, you may want to put the organization as the conference itself. So you could create a organization in here called your conference. So let's say this is your emergency management conference. You can go into the organizations database and create this as such. Instead of tying them to their actual real organization, which you can use other fields for, you can create one in here. So I'm just going to create one in here called, I'm just going to put here Emergency Management Conference. Oops, 22, not 2020. So you can go in here, you can select your agency in here, your country, your state. Again, let's put this for Minnesota because that's where I'm at. And then your time zone. I am Central. Where are you? There it is. And then click Save. So I can create the organization. I can go in there and upload, especially with the conference, if there is a logo that you're using for this conference that you've been using for marketing, you can upload that right here, and that's going to print off on the ID tag. Okay. So again, JPEG, PNG type images, just make sure that they're less than 5 megabytes, and of course of good quality. You can also put the location contact information on here. Again, we're just printing off the standard design, but again, you may have something that's more custom for your conference. So for your conference itself, you may want the logo to be larger. You may want the name of the event to be larger, whatever that is, right? So there is some possibilities for customizing your conference type IDs. Now, if you're looking at customizing, there are fees for that, especially if you want us, Salamander, to design that, or if you want to purchase ID Designer and design it yourself. So ID Designer is a separate software that is used to design any type of ID. You can edit existing IDs and make them your own. Just if you're interested in that, make sure you contact your local sales rep. They can assist you with that process. But you'd upload this, so now you have your conference built into the system. So now you can add in your people. So you can go into the People tab right here, or the Quick Add, just where we had before. And then you can click your New. So then your ID, if you want to keep it the generic, system generated ID, by all means do so. But the organization, in this case now, we would select our conference. And then first name of the individual, I'm just going to hear John Doe. And then any information that you want to put in here. So employment on here, you can utilize this to enter in additional information. So what their title is, you can put that in here. And then you could utilize station. I know a lot of agencies in the past have utilized station for the actual name of their organization. Now the station field does not print off on our standard ID designs, so this would be something that we'd have to do for customizing. So to include that station field on the ID tag itself when you print it. So that's what I've seen other agencies do in the past, and what we recommend using that field for conference tracking. So in this case, you could put that in here. Let's say they are plans manager. This is their organization, Moosewood. So Moosewood County Emergency Management. So you can shorten that up if you need to in there. Other information, if you want to put in there, if you want to put their email address, highly recommend that. And a number in there if you need to. Again, this is more for reporting purposes. So afterwards, you can email them their certificates. So that's going to be important, especially if these are certified type classes that you're holding for these conferences, is that you have some way to contact the individual. And normally in your registration process, you would have them fill in this base information already. So you put in their email addresses in here. So just put jdoe@gmail.com. Okay, and their phone number, whatever that is. Okay. And then any other information that you want to enter in here, and then click Save. So in this case, you may not have pictures for these individuals. More than likely, you probably won't. Now, if you were using the Rapid Tag Station for this, obviously you would be able to take pictures. But for a SalamanderLive purpose, you may not be able to upload any pictures unless you're looking at adding that as a security feature. Then, having them send in a picture beforehand, and you can upload them directly into their profile, and then that would be printed off on their ID tag. But most organizations we've worked in the past with have not done so. Not a big deal. One of the most important thing is just is their name and then their agency. Another thing that I forgot to mention on there is birth date as well too. With the birth date piece, there is a security piece when you're looking at using the check-in wizard to check them in. It's going to ask for their birth date for them to verify their birth date. So I'm going to put this in here so that we can actually use that wizard. I'll show you that process as well. So I'm just put today's date for their birth date. It will be a lot easier for me to remember. And then 1972. Okay, so that's their birth date. Okay. So then you'd enter everybody into the system here and then print off their ID tags. So the best way to do this is to filter out your list, right? So you can filter out your list by organization. So you would choose your conference. So here's my conference. Filter out your list. This will give out your entirety. Oh, hold on here. Center. There he is. So then you'd have your entire list. Print them off a physical ID tag. And then that ID tag would be given to whoever is going to be running the registration desk, right? So at the registration desk, they would have, their ID and their little packets through the day, right? Whatever packets that's going to include any goodies, swag in there, information about the conferences or the classes, whatever you put together for each attendee. You could put that with that and then just have them know that they need to have that ID tag for to check in for each of the classes. And as they check in through breakfast, lunch, or dinner, etc. So all the different classes and assignments that they'll be moving throughout the day. So you'd actually print those off. Again, you could choose your custom design, or you can use any of our standard designs for that. Okay, so printing, simply click there and then print. Now, if in this case, you also have the capability to email them their credentials too ahead of time. So you have your two options there as well. If you want to save on, on paper, you can do the emailing as well. But again, they still need something physical for you to check them in at the door, so that you're physically scanning them into each of the classes. But if you want to email their credentials ahead of time, so they at least have that, so they've got two options, they can do that. So if they don't have the physical ID tag, at least they have an email that has their credential, and they can still use that to check in for each of the classes. Okay. Once you have everybody in the system, you've printed off their ID tags or emailed them out their barcodes. The next thing you want to do is to go in here and add in all of your assignments. So all your classes as assignments. So normally with your conferences, you would have a set schedule of classes that you would be running each day. So you would enter in every single one of those classes for each of those days. If your conference is running for 3 days, you would go in there and enter in all classes for 3 days into SalamanderLive under the assignments database in here. If there's paid breakfast, lunch, or dinner, and you want to be able to track as they are checked into each of those, you want to make sure that you add those as assignments as well. If there's an opening ceremony and you want to track everybody at that opening ceremony, you want to make sure you add that as an assignment. So in this case, what I have is I've added in here already breakfast. You'll see in here I've added breakfast. I've added the classes. For easy purposes, I just put these as class 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then you can add your lunch and your dinner and then your checkout assignments if you need to. You don't need to add the off-scene assignment since that is already pre-built when you create the event either through Salamander Live or the Track app. Once you add all the assignments into the database here, all you need to do is print them off. So you have two options for printing off. So you can either choose to print off all of the classes into one booklet. So then you have, all the classes there. But what I recommend, which is going to be a lot easier, is if you print off each day. So all the classes for each day, you print them off in one batch. And then day 2, print off those in one batch, and day 3. So for example, I'll pull this up. So again, if you're doing just like a mass print off of all barcodes, again, you're printing these off on just a paper copy, right? So you're doing 10 barcodes per sheet. So you see on here, this is just all the classes on a sheet. So if you had, let's say, 10 classes, you'd have all 10 classes, their barcodes right here. Again, if there's not a lot of classes, this might work out best for you. But if your conference, let's say you're running like multiple classes for each day, you're running, 10 classes each day, you may want to do a per day type assignment barcode sheet. So for example, I have a day 1 right here. So this is day 1. So you see on here, this is day 1. So these are just classes for day 1. There's 3 classes for day 1, class 1, 2, 3. I've got my breakfast, my lunch, my registration assignment, dinner. Okay. You can put this into a nice 3-ring binder if you have the capability to edit. You can edit your PDF document, add some text on here if you want to put like these are day 1 assignments, to kind of help you out to figure out what is day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, especially if you've got a longer conference that you're running. So this is the great thing about, the editing option on here. So you could put on here, EM, oops, if I can spell here, EM conference day 1 classes or assignments, whatever you want to put on there. Okay. You can have that printed on the top of your page, and then you would do that for day 2. So here's day 2. So I would do that for day 2 as well. And then you would do the exact same thing. Edit this, put, this is day 2 on here. So you have your different assignment barcodes or class barcodes for each day. This would be then given to your Track app user so that they can go in and actually go in and scan this. Again, this is using these tools without the plan feature. As you know, with the plan feature, you can actually build all this out ahead of time. We're kind of building this without a plan. Okay, so this is the workflow without the plan feature, which is an additional cost if you were to purchase that additional functionality. If you're interested in the plan feature, you can, of course, contact your local sales rep, and they can provide you a quote for that. But the process would be just a little bit different if you're using this for a plan. It might actually be a little bit easier to do, and I can show you guys that process as well. So day 1, you got your day 2. So then you've got all this prepped and ready. Okay, all prepped and ready. So how would this go for the Track apps? Okay, so I'm going to pull this back in to my PowerPoint presentation here so I can go over the Track app workflow. So here is the Track app workflow. So again, you can start the event through the Track app, or you can start it through Salamander Live. Really up to you and how you want to use this. It's just kind of 2 processes on here, okay? So we're going to look at the Track app workflow, and then we'll take a look at if you want to check people in through Salamander Live, what would that process look like? So we start the event through the Track app. So you would have to have a person. They would need to create the event for each day in the Track app, okay? So they would name it, conference day 1. And then once they create conference day 1, they can go in there and add the assignments. So they have 2 options. They can manually download those assignments if they know what those are. But if they have those barcodes, they can easily and quickly scan them in through the Track app, to have them all available so that all the other Track app users can be able to check them in, especially if their job is to check people into Class 1, they'll be at the door and they'll be able to see Class 1 there and they can check them in. Okay, so that's step 3 right here, is all Track app users, all the other Track app users join the event in the Track app. So first point is the check-in point, right? So this is where people are checking into the conference. They're at the registration desk. This is where, you're going to give them their ID tag and their little bag of goodies. So in there, you can have someone with the Track app users can also scan them in. So before you give them their ID tag, you can check them into that registration assignment. So let them know that they've been registered in. Okay. And then they may attend an opening ceremony, which you may not want to track. You may have breakfast out there, which is already part of the conference budget. Donuts, cookies, coffee, etc. Right? So you may not track breakfast. So everybody's kind of mingling, and then once class starts, so the first class, or if there could be multiple classes running at the same time, you would have to have the correct number of Track app users out, at each of those classes in the front of the door to scan people in as they are walking into that class. So they're stand at the door, they're going to give you their ID tag, and you're going to scan them into that class. So that's going to check them in. Okay. Now, as they are moving from class to class, let's say that class is an hour, that class is done. You don't need to have the Track app users check them out in that case. I know that a lot of agencies, it's too much work, so they don't do that, which you don't have to. In this case, you're just tracking that they've attended that class. Okay. The only time that they will do that is if that person, they leave the premise. So if they, for some reason, they attended that class or were there for 10 minutes, they got an emergency call, and they had to leave the actual class and the building, then that way they would actually check them out of the actual conference itself. But in this case, if they're in the class there, they walked out of that classroom to take, a 5-minute call, and then go back in, they're not tracking that process. But in this case, let's say that class 1 has ended, and now people are moving to class 2. So in this case, you would have, again, a person be standing at class 2 at the door and check in those individuals. What's going to happen is that the Track app is smart. It's going to know that this person has moved from this class 1 to class 2. Okay, so it's going to automatically show that timestamp for when they checked into class 2. So it's going to automatically check them out from class 1 and then check them into class 2. Okay, so you can see all that, track all that through the Track app. You can also track that and see that through SalamanderLive in the reports as well as in the roster tile. You'll see a little bit of that movement in there, but mostly the reports. Okay. As you start moving throughout the day, there could be lunch, right? I know that a lot of conferences, there could be a paid lunch. Sometimes the lunch is not provided for. It's not included in that conference fee. But if you have them as an option to stay and eat a lunch that they've paid for ahead of time, you can actually track that by scanning them into that lunch assignment. Now, there's a way that we talked about this with other agencies and how you can track people. How do you know who has paid for lunch and who has not? And we thought of a great idea, which is to put a sticker on those attendees who did not pay. So for those that did not pay, they would have a sticker on them. Or you could put that sticker on the people that did pay, whichever is going to be easiest for you. But you could put a sticker on there, a sticker that's hard for them to duplicate, because I've heard from from other conferences that just people, especially if you're holding in a hotel, some people don't know, and you may have some regular hotel attendee just come in and go to your lunch, and now you're paying for someone's lunch that didn't pay for it. So that way that you've got their ID, they have to scan them in with their Salamander credential. They have to have that sticker on there to allow them to get lunch. Okay, so just again, options for you to do that. And then at the end of the day, again, after lunch, they go to classes again. You still do that process. At the end of the event, again, this is really up to your organization if you want to do this. There is a checkout assignment that you can create. You can check people out through the day. As you guys know, the checkout assignment does not stop the clock. Most people don't really care about that. But if you're looking for accountability, making sure that all conference attendees were there and they've left the premise, you can move them off scene instead of the checked out assignment. I mean, they can still be mingling around and talking and stuff, but if the conference has ended, you can put them into that off scene assignment or that checked out assignment, whichever way that you want to do it. If you move it to checked out, you still want to make sure you move it to off scene so that they're all out of the event. In this case, some agency says we don't really care. We just want to make sure that they've attended the classes and they're checked out for the day. Okay, so you have your options there. And then, of course, at the end of the day, someone's going to need to go into SalamanderLive and end the event. As you know, you cannot end the event through the track app. That has to be done through SalamanderLive. And then this process is basically repeated for each conference day. Okay, so I'm going to walk through this process through the track app for you so you guys can see this. And then I'll walk through the SalamanderLive portion of this so you can see that process as well. Okay. All right, so let me get my track app up and running on here. All right, so here's my track app. All right, so here's my track app. So step one, create the event, right? So that's going off of our workflow. If you want to see the workflow, I can pull that up so you guys can see that on the back end here. Put that in the back here if you guys want to see this. Okay, start the event. If that's too much for the screen, let me know. I can close out that back window. But for those that are more visual learners and you want to see the workflow, I just have it in the background there for you to see. So in this case, tap the plus button right here to create the event. So this is one person just needs to do this. So whoever's, going to be responsible for this would go in here and create the event. So I'm just going to name this conference 2022, and then day one. Okay. Conference 2022, day one, I'm going to create. And there I go. So I'm in here right now. So I've got my options. I can add my classes. I can manually download them. So if you didn't want to print off the barcodes because you only have limited classes for each day, you can do the download function. So simply tap the plus button, tap assignments, and then you can search for your assignments to add them in. So there's my breakfast. There it is. If that's something you're tracking. Your classes, again, you can add your classes in there. But again, it's so much easier if you have your barcodes. So if you have your barcodes available, it's going to be a lot easier. So I'm just going to move this over here real quick, and I'll quickly scan these in. So this is make sure I have all my assignments. Day one. All right, so I've got my day one, or class one, class two, okay, lunch, class three, and registration. There you go. So I've got all my assignments in here. So class one, class two, class three, breakfast, lunch, registration. If there's dinner and you want to, if they paid for that as well too, let's say it's an all-day event, you can add that in. Most conferences will end at a certain time, and people are kind of responsible for providing their own dinner, but they may have some mingling after that, after dinner or something, which you're not tracking at that moment. So now you have your individuals, right? So here they are. Or all your classes, they're added into the track app. So now you're all prepped and ready for people to walk in that door and start checking in. So in this case, you would have, your registration desk have a track app, and they would just be in this registration assignment. So they can just simply tap that in, sit in there, and start waiting for people to check in. As people check in, they would scan them in. So in this case, I would scan this individual in. I didn't print off Mr. John Doe's, which is okay. Let me just print them off real quick here. Mr. John Doe. Actually, I'm going to email this real quick to myself. It's easier than printing. Move this over real quick here. Okay. Sorry about that. It'll be a lot faster for me to do it this way. So I'm going to email it. There it goes. Email came through. Okay. All right, there's my email. I'm going to scan this person in. There's the credential. There's the barcode. I'm going to scan this person in. There's John Doe, verified, and there you go. So you check them in, shows he's with Emergency Management Conference 2022, Plans Manager. In this case, he would be checked in at registration, right? You would check in the next person, give him his goodie bag with his ID, tell him, give him the spiel that he needs to have his ID tag and have it scanned as he moves through class to class and for lunch and stuff, okay? Okay, so you've got them in here. You have them in. Next on this is to scan him into his different classes. So in this case, you don't even have to manually move him. A lot of this is going to be just done through scanning, right? So at class 1, so you're at the door. Maybe you have 2 people standing at the door. Maybe it's a large class. Maybe you have 100 people that's attending that class 1. So you may have 2 people standing there at the door with their track app with class 1 active. Right? So you see in here, I tapped on class 1, active. All I need to do now is tap the scan button, and you can continuously scan them in. So I can scan this person, move them in, next person, scan, 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 scan. As you notice, your camera stays active. This is your continuous scan mode. So you never have to leave this camera. You can just scan person, they go in, next person, next person, next person. It's super simple, super easy, and super efficient. All this is tracked in this person's assignment history. So if you wanted to see this, you can tap on John Doe, you can tap on his name, and you can see his assignment history. So when did he arrive to check in? He checked in at 12:31. When did he check in for class 1? Okay, and as he moves from class 2, class 3, class 4, class 5, you can see that. You can see that history. So let's say he's moving to class 2 now. Let's say it's class 2. I can scan him in. Again, I tap scan class 2, scan him in, and there he is. So now if I tap his name, you'll see that now I've got a history on here. Scanned in at class 1 at 12:32. Let's say this is 1:33, class 2, so on and so forth. So you have a full history of him being in that class. And in this case, if he were to leave, something happened, emergency happened, he had to leave the conference, in this case, you could move him into the checkout assignment and then move him off scene. Okay? So in this case, if class 2, let's say he was only there for half of that class and he needed to go to the checkout assignment, where he needed to leave that conference. You can scan him into the checked-in assignment or a checked-out assignment if you need to. So in this case, I've got my barcodes on here. I can just move him if needed to. So I can find where he's at, and I can scan him into that checked-out assignment. Okay? So let's just say he says he's done for the day. I know I don't have that barcode on here. Let me put that barcode in here. Okay, there's his barcode. My email. So then I can move him into the checked out assignment. So now he's checked out for the day. So you'll see he said checked out here. And then again, if you don't care about it, stopping the clock, in this case, you're just noting that he is no longer part of that class or part of the conference. He's checked out. you can leave it as such. Or if you wanted to truly move him off scene, so he's outside the building or the premise, you can move him to off scene as well. So you got a couple ways that you can do that process. So that's how you would do this. You would do this for every single person. You can move them through breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and you can track them as they make each of their movements. You never have to check them out of each class. It's a lot of work. I know that workflow might help, but it's a lot of work for you to, for a lot of agencies to stand there and then check everybody out because they may have limited track apps. But if that's something you want to do, you can do a class 3 check-in, class 3 check-out. So you have multiple assignments in that case. So you would have 2 assignments for each class, right? So class 1 check-in, class 1 check-out, class 2 check-in, class 2 check-out, class 3 check-in, class 3 check-out. So if that's the case that you want to do it, you could do it that way as well, okay? So any questions on this process? Any questions on this process? Okay. Now the other process, so this is the track app here. So the other process I'm going to talk about that you can use is SalamanderLive. So if you are limited on the number of track apps you have, you could use SalamanderLive at your registration desk to print or to check people into the event. Okay. So in this case, this is something new. This is something we released, I want to say, in our release version 66. It's either 65 or 66. But we released this just a few months ago. But there is a quick check-in feature that you have available here. So your registration desk doesn't necessarily need to have a track app, especially if you're limited. You can have them check in people through this check-in process right here. So you can do a quick check-in. It's going to pull up the wizard. In this case, you kind of have to do some setup first. So you have to click the settings. You check in to the event, and you have to select the event. Okay. So conference 2022, day 1, and then you can put them into registration. You see it? It's going to pull all the assignments that you had created for this. So again, this does require you to at least have the assignments created through the track app, have all the assignments added, because you'll need to be able to select the assignment. So in this case, we're going to move everybody into registration. Now in this case, if you wanted to save printing until the day of, let's say you wanted to print off ID tags the day of when they check in, you have that capability to do so too. Just make sure that your computer is there with your printer and all your supplies. Again, we recommend doing all the printing beforehand, but if you wanted to print on the day of and hand them a freshly printed ID tag, you have that option. In this case, we're not going to have that. We're just going to click Save. Okay. So now we've got our setup ready. So now this would just be the window that's open right here. So at your registration desk, this is what would happen. You go in here, you would put in, you look for John Doe. There he is. It's going to require you to enter his birthday. So remember earlier I said that for security, it's going to ask you to verify their birthday. So in this case, you'd have to enter in their birthday. So 04/07/1972. You verify the birthday. It's going to find verified. You're going to close. All you have to do is finish and new. Now this person has been checked into the event to the registration assignment. Okay. Checked into the registration assignment. Okay. And then you would do that for the next person and the next person and the next person. So this kind of allows you to have that track app for someone else that's actually going to be using it to check people in at the door for the classes. So this is a great feature as well too, so that you don't have to have another device with you. More than likely you would just have a computer, a laptop that you can use to check people in very quickly. So again, new feature, highly recommend. Questions on the check-in wizard? Okay. So if we look through the track app, you'll notice that John Doe is moved to registration. So you see that it automatically syncs, and now he's in registration as what you put him here, and with the quick check-in wizard. Okay. Now, anybody on here has the plans feature that you want to see how to quickly create a conference plan? Just open it up for you guys to see if anybody has that, if you want to see it. You can either send me a chat or you can unmute yourself and say, yes, I want to see it. You can, or if not, or you can put a thumbs up. I think there is a raise hand as well too. Anybody? Okay. If not, then I'll just go into the reports. Okay. All right. So to get out of this quick check-in, you do have to go to the actual settings, and you have to click Close Wizard. Click Close Wizard, and then you're going to go to the event side. So on the event side, you're going to see your event. So there it is, Conference 22, Day 1. So in this case, I'm going to go in here. This is where you can see all your reports. So your reports are in here, your roster tile, which is a great tool, especially if people forgot to check in. I mean, normally you wouldn't have them forget to check in, right? But I know that some agencies in the past have had people join into their to the classes remotely, or virtually, and they forget to check them in for the class even though they're there. So in this case, you could add them in. You can check them in, and then you can change their time so they reflect their actual time that they're actually there for. So that's what the roster can do. All you do is click in the checkbox, click the plus, and then make the change in here. Now just note that you do have to have administrative rights in order to be able to do this manual log entry form. Okay. Other than that, your reports are in here. These are the same reports. Again, we're looking at activity reports, so you're looking at people. So it's these right here. So your people activity summary. You can look at the activity cost if you wanted to. That's what we're going to just take a look at, is the activity cost. You can also do a snapshot report if you wanted to. The snapshot is the only one that contains their address information. Okay, so and their phone number, so you can see on here. I'll make this bigger. So here it is, assignment registration. It's going to show you his existing current assignment. Okay, so that's the difference with this. And it also has his phone number and his email. On this, obviously, this is not populating its phone number. You can move this back right there. That's his phone number. So if you need to look at contact information for sending out certificates for the classes the people have completed, here you have it. Now, of course, certificate generation is not something that's available through Salamander Live. That would have to be something you have to do outside of Salamander Live. You could pull up these reports, figure out who's attended what, and then figure out who actually deserves that certificate. Okay. Now, if you wanted to take it further, you can actually upload those certificates once you create them. You can upload them, especially if they're going to be people that are going to be, let's say you run these conferences on a yearly basis, and it's usually the same crowd, or there could be a new crowd. You can upload them to their actual record as well if you need to. So there is an option for you to upload it directly into their profile under people here. Again, if that's something you want to do. It's just a way to kind of track it. Okay. The other report is going to be this activity cost. So again, this one right here, even though you're not tracking costs for this, you may not be tracking costs, but you're tracking their time in. So in this case, it's going to show you all the timestamps and all the classes that he was checked into. So here it is. This one also has phone number. Here it is his assignment time. So you see here, it'll show all his classes that he was checked in. Okay, so let's say he checked out and then he rechecked back in. So he left the building and then he came back in and he attended class 3. So you'll see that. You'll see that full, all the time in and time out for each of those different classes and how long you were in the classes for. If the class is 2 hours and he was only there for 5 minutes, you'll be able to see that. You see in here, class 1, it checked him out immediately at 12:32. The moment you checked him out from registration, or checked him in from registration to class 1. See that, the time frames? So you'll have that. Now for registration, that's what he's currently in right now. So even though there's a timeout time in there, it's still currently running. This one right here just shows you that this is the time in which you pull the report, which is 12:44 p.m. my time. Okay, and then your total assigned time on here, you'll see. All right, so that is the report that you can look at for attendee activity on whether or not they've attended all the classes. And of course, you would see a lunch on there as well too. So if lunch was something that you're looking at, figuring out, how many people, so there, let's say there's 100 people that paid for lunch, and then you pull your report and you see that only 95 people actually went to lunch, does the amount match up? Okay, so you can see that as well too from here. All right, so what questions do you guys have for conference attendance tracking? Any questions? No questions? All right. Well, this does conclude today's training. If you are preparing for a conference and you're running a conference and you have questions about the process, please feel free to reach out to me at training@salamanderlive.com. You can also reach out to your local rep as well too, especially if you have a close relationship with them and you've been working with them for a while. Please feel free to reach out to either one of us and we can assist. Other than that, I just want to thank you again so much for you guys for being on this call today. If you're interested in coming again and reviewing and refreshing this information, I will be holding this training again next week, actually in 2 weeks. So thank you guys so much. Have a great day. Take care. Stay warm out there.